palpable panic on Wall Street, red numbers, and worries about something else that starts with an R, a recession.
What we're doing is very big. We're bringing wealth back to America. That's a big thing. And there are always periods of, it takes a little time. It takes a little time.
He's talking about that period of transition is what he's talking about is his firm belief that tariffs are going to be the main way that the United States brings in revenue. Never mind what they do to the prices that people actually pay when they purchase goods in a global economy. I mean, Scott, virtually no one who understands economics believes that tariffs are a good idea.
Several months later.
Well, I would just like to go back. I'd like to build a DeLorean and go back to April when everybody here was predicting likely to cause a recession. Investment stops and a recession happens. They're not talking about a U.S. recession. They're talking about a global recession.
What was happening in April,
lead to
Scott?
Recession. Eventually, there being a reception.
Scott, hold on a second.
Very cleverly.
Yeah.
If he's chosen to pick
I
my
just
words,
want to point
just
out,
a second,
you
sir.
called it. You called the recession. You
And
called
and
it.
Germany.
You took your shoe off.
And Joe, would you like to see that again?
You took your shoe off. You brought cookies out here.
15% shoe.
You took your shoe off and you said there was going to be a recession.
Listen, Scott,
GDP is 3%.
It's too early to give a final
called it.
verdict.
All right, Scott,
It's too early. Just a second, Abby. He's basically calling me out here. It's too early to give a final verdict on the tariffs. You may wish to, but at the moment, it can't be said what the long-term effect is going to be.
I am just a journalist, and all
Scott,
I
no,
do,
you're not.
all I can
Scott.
do is read the economic data.
It's a bit of a stretch.
3%
Scott,
GDP,
Scott Jennings.
trade deals, record high in the stock market,
Come on, these trade
cooling
deals,
inflation.
these trade deals
Hold on
are
a second.
garbage.
It's actually much simpler.
Garbage?
Yes.
Boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. So, once again, we got to talk about the economy as liberals are eating crow over the fact that their predictions that tariffs would cause a recession and hyperinflation are turning out to be incorrect. Okay, very, very, very incorrect. Okay, but liberals are not going to let it go.
President, your tariffs policy goes into effect tomorrow.
Yeah.
As you know, a federal appellate court today heard oral arguments about whether or not you had the authority to unilaterally impose those tariffs. I'm not going to get you to weigh in on the legal arguments, but you're weighing your decision to do that, your authority to do that, based on a 1977 law. It's never been invoked before. Why didn't you invoke this law?
Well, we've been winning all along.
I just want to ask you, why didn't you invoke this law in your first term? You could have taken in billions upon billions of dollars in your first term, but you waited until your second term.
Yeah, because in my first term, I was fighting lunatics like you who were trying to do things incorrectly and inappropriately to a president that was duly elected. And we did do certain tariffs in the first term. If you look at China, we took in hundreds of billions of dollars from China. But when COVID came, the last thing I was going to do is tell France and Italy and Spain and a couple of other countries that we're going to hit you with tariffs. We had to fight the COVID situation when that came. But if you look at my first term, we took in hundreds of billions of dollars worth of tariffs, but you people didn't cover it very well.
This is so simple. Let me lay it out. You go to Europe, you take an American product to sell it in Italy, they whack a 13 to 15% VAT tax, consumer tax. And you go to the airport, you get your money back, of which 1% people do. Same in Canada, same in Mexico, England, Switzerland, all the same. All that Trump has done, because we never had consumer taxes in the U.S., you can't get that through Congress, he calls it a tariff. Reciprocal, and kind of the highlight deal right now is the EU, 26 cats being herded, and Germany and France are a little, for lack of better words, pissed off. But what he did is he whacked them with a reciprocal 15% VAT tax in the U.S. You ship something over here from Europe, you pay the same thing they whack an American product with. It's not that complicated. And the market, because listen, I don't give a rodent's rear end about politicians. I care about policy. I have to invest. The market has absorbed this idea, and GM came out last week and said, okay, I get it. Our margins are down on car part tariffs, but we think we'll eat a third. We'll push a third out on price increases, and we'll use AI to solve the other third. No one's even talking about the productivity of AI.
Price increases. People are going to pay more for their cars.
45% decrease in profits.
Okay, so tell me why the American economy right now is at its highest value in history. This is not an ad for Trump. I'm an investor. Something's working here. It's a policy decision. I'm a policy guy. The Europeans have been sucking 15% cash for 40 years out of America. And you're unhappy that we're doing the same thing to them? I don't think so. Get over it. Breathe the oxygen and be happy with your portfolio.
No, Mr. Wonderful, liberals can't be happy because Trump is in office, right? It doesn't matter how good their portfolios are doing right now. Despite the doomsday predictions being wrong, the recession predictions being wrong, the hyperinflation predictions being wrong, despite all that, they can't be happy, right? They're more upset that they're wrong than the fact that, hey, doomsday didn't happen, okay? And that's what we have here, okay? CNN, the liberal media, trying to grasp for anything to say that they were right. Well, like, for example, you just saw the CNN anchor said, well, you're going to see price increases, right? Price increases. Again, she says that without providing any real context in regards to the quote unquote price increases that you're likely to see, okay? That comes specifically from tariffs, which is different from overall inflation, right? But the Fed studied this in May. They studied the effect on Trump's tariffs that he put on China early on. So we're talking about 10 to 25%. And they said that so far, the effect of these tariffs has been a 0.33 percentage points increase in core goods PCE prices. So that means core goods PCE, so only a certain segment of prices, not all prices across the board, just a certain segment, less than 0.5%. Less than 0.5%. We're talking about 10 to 25% tariffs on Chinese goods, resulted in less than 0.5% increase in a small category of goods. Now, overall inflation, right? Overall core PCE prices, the tariffs contributed 0.08 percentage points. Let me repeat that. 0.08 percentage points, a rounding error. This is consistent with the same findings of the Federal Reserve in many other studies that found at most Trump's 2017 to 2018 tariffs on China resulted in a 0.1 to 0.2% increase in core PCE inflation. Again, basically a rounding error at that point, right? A rounding error, right? And when you talk about CPI, give or take 0.3 percentage points. Again, we're talking about rounding errors here, right? Rounding errors, okay? As a result of these tariffs. That's what we're talking about. So again, we really don't know. It seems as if it could very well be neutral, right? It could be like I've outlined to you guys, which is that likely the effects are going to be in some markets, you're going to see prices go up. In some markets, you're going to see prices go down. But what really gets me about all of the criticism of what President Trump is doing is that you can disagree with tariffs as an economic policy, right? Me personally, I'm more of a fair trade type of guy, but people always complain about jobs being shipped overseas, right? About how we're selling out the average American and allowing our manufacturing to be shipped overseas. The president is doing something about that. You may not agree with it, but he's actually taking solid steps to do something about it. And you're going to have these same people that are complaining about what the president's doing. They'll come out here and they'll virtue signal about how middle America lost jobs and we have hollowed out our manufacturing base. They will virtue signal about it. But when it comes to actually trying to put in some protectionist policies to do something about it, they're not willing to do that. So all I'm saying is this: you can disagree with protectionism, right? There are a lot of valid criticisms of protectionism, but don't complain about protectionism and then turn around and virtue signal about how the middle class has been hollowed out, how manufacturing jobs are going overseas, and we need to do something about it when you're not actually willing to do anything about it at all. Okay, I'm just saying. The liberal media, for the most part, my point is that they've been very wrong. The tariffs likely are not going to cause hyperinflation, regardless of where the inflation rate goes, whether it goes up, whether it goes down, or whether it stays between 2.5 and 3 percentage points, which is where it is right now. Regardless of where it goes, the contribution to overall inflation from tariffs is a rounding error in regards to what we can actually measure thus far. Okay. So with that being said, we got to react to this clip. of CNN being upset when confronted about the fact that they were wrong about the predictions that they made when it comes to President Trump's tariff policy.
Me appears to be holding up, at least for now. And here is the good news. The nation's GDP, which is a key economic indicator, grew sharply in the second quarter. Another good sign, people are buying stuff. Consumer spending, which powers 70% of the economy, also up slightly, combined with steady inflation, a stronger stock market, and tariff revenue, which according to the White House is in the billions. And things appear great. But that's even despite those tariffs. But just today, in true Oprah fashion, Trump basically said, you get a tariff and you get a tariff. He's slapping hefty tariffs on everything from copper to Brazil. And then he threatened India because he's mad about its relationship with Russia over oil. Now, those new tariff rates, Trump says, will take effect on August 1st. That's the deadline that he keeps delaying. Now, this time, he says that date is not going to move. Joining us in our fifth seat at the table, CNN business editor at large and CNN anchor Richard Quest. Richard, the Wall Street Journal described this as a weird GDP report because there's a lot of stuff inside the numbers. The headline number is good, but what do you see on the inside?
Oh, the GDP number was weird because the previous number was greatly affected by imports. All those importers trying to get stuff into the United States before the tariff barriers came down. And so the previous number was off. This number, it's good, don't get me wrong, it is a good number, but it can't be necessarily taken to the bank just yet. We do not know the full effects of the tariffs yet. To put this in perspective, pre-Donald Trump, the average US tariff was 3%. Today, the average US tariff is 17%, which is the highest level since Smoot-Hawley in the 1920s and 30s. Now, we cannot know at this point exactly how that's going to play out, which is why the Fed held interest rates as they two dissenters, yes, two dissenters, I'll give you that, but they held at them for the time being simply because, as Jerome Powell says, we just don't know.
Yeah, and this latest PCE report, which is why I talked about it before this video, definitely, again, is not going to help the case for lowering interest rates. But again, when you look back at it historically, again, this idea that we have to be below 2%, it's kind of weird, right? Because it almost seemed arbitrary when you look back at it. You say, okay, well, the average is 3% historically. Why is it that we have to be below 2%? I guess that's because from the 2010s to the pandemic, I mean, it was moderating around 2%, right? So I understand wanting to get back there. And I think that we ideally should get back there. But at the same time, I'm starting to question whether or not it's even possible to get back there, especially considering how the government is spending significantly more money than we were pre-pandemic, which to me probably is the primary driver of the inflation that we're seeing, more so than the tariffs. Actually, we know that for certain because, like I just outlined to you guys, the tariffs in and of themselves, at least according to the Fed, in terms of what we know so far, have contributed to a 0.08% increase, right? So not even 0.1% of what you're seeing comes from the tariffs, right? Again, this is a rounding error, right? A rounding error at this point, right? In regards to the effect that tariffs have had on inflation, at least in regards to these reports. So let's continue.
Well, I would just like to go, but I'd like to build a DeLorean and go back to April when everybody here was predicting likely to cause a recession. Investment stops and a recession happens. They're not talking about a U.S. recession. They're talking about a global recession.
What was happening in April,
Lead to recession. Eventually, there being a reception.
So very cleverly, hang on a second. If he's chosen to pick my words, just a second,
You called the recession.
You
took your shoe off.
Would you like to see that again?
You took your shoe off. You brought cookies out here.
15%.
You took your shoe off and you said there was going to be a recession.
Listen, Scott,
GDP is 3%.
It's too early to give a final verdict.
All right, Scott,
it's too early. Just a second, Abby. He's basically calling me out here. It's too early to give a final verdict on the tariffs. You may wish to, But at the moment, it can't be said what the long-term effect is going to be.
I am just a journalist, and all I can do is read the economic data.
It's a bit of a stretch.
3% GDP, trade deals, record high in the stock market.
Come on, these trade deals are garbage.
It's actually much simpler.
Garbage?
Yes.
Hold on a second. It's much simpler than this. Just one second, because I think it's super important to understand. Scott, what was happening in April of this year, 2025? What was happening then? What did the president announce on that week, the first week of April? What did he announce?
The president was implementing
his
Scott? Tariff agenda.
And what were those tariff levels?
And well, they were different for different countries.
Okay, so
but every single person predicted calamity. Calamity.
Scott, you can't skip steps here.
And there is none.
What were those tariff levels?
They were different. He had a chart for different
not just
countries.
Different. They were 2 to 3 times higher than the current tariff levels. Did those tariffs go into place, Scott?
It's different for every country.
Scott,
it's different for every country.
It's a simple question. Did those tariffs go into place?
He has delayed some of the tariffs.
Yes or no?
He has delayed some of the tariffs, and he's made deals, and he's implemented others.
Did any of the tariff levels that Trump announced on that week, did they ever go into place?
Some tariffs have been implemented, some have been delayed, and some deals have been made.
The answer is they did not. They did
some
not.
Tariffs have been
and
implemented.
all of those,
some tariffs have been implemented.
All of those quotes.
That's why we have all this money coming in.
We have them here.
Even you said
it. You're playing with numbers here.
We have them here.
No, back in April.
You guys are so mad. Why are you rooting for failure? Why does this table root for failure?
Please, because you are saying that you are taking a number of 40, 50, 60% back in April, and you're comparing it to a number of 10, 15% now.
Fine, but it was his strategy to negotiate and create leverage,
Scott,
and give us the situation
it
we're
is
in
completely,
today.
okay, Sir Michael, I will let you talk, but I just have to say, completely disingenuous to suggest
I'm sorry,
that, hold on,
you were the
Scott,
one calling
please,
for a recession in
April,
not me.
Give me 1 second.
You called for it.
Give me 1 second. Please let me finish. It is completely disingenuous to suggest that what economists said would happen if Trump imposed 50 and 60%, let's jump all the way up to 135% level tariffs on this economy would have been a recession. Those levels never happened, which is why there has been no recession.
You sound
so
disappointed.
It's not that complicated.
The levels haven't.
Yeah, so what's actually disingenuous is Abby Phillip pretending as if her prediction that she made, right? Because we have video clips of her making this prediction, right? Running with this narrative that Trump's tariffs or that his economic policy regarding tariffs would cause a recession is not incorrect. It is still incorrect. Like you were wrong. Okay. Just because you were too dumb to realize that the initial rollout on Liberation Day was a starting point, right? This was the maximalist position. We went over this, right? I acknowledged on that day, I was like, yeah, this is the maximalist position. Obviously, that's not where the president wanted to end the negotiation, right? That was the beginning of the negotiation, and that he was going to get some tariff level below that, right? That was always the goal. So again, it's your fault that you came out here and predicted that Trump's economic policies would cause a recession without knowing that he's actually negotiating, right? So again, anything to basically refuse to give the president credit where credit is due. Because if he would have started out at 15 or 10%, then they also would have said those would have called recessions, right? That's what they would have said. They would have said, oh, this is going to cause a recession. They definitely would have said that. And they would have been boohoo-whining and crying about that. But because he started so high, now all of a sudden 10 to 15% doesn't sound so bad, right? It doesn't seem as bad, right, as it would have seemed if he would have started with 10 to 15%. That is what Abby Phillip is refusing to acknowledge. The people who call for doomsday were calling for doomsday because they claim that Trump's tariff policies are going to lead us to a recession. That did not happen. The tariffs have been implemented, okay? We're bringing in billions of dollars in revenue from these tariffs, and we're not seeing hyperinflation. We're not seeing empty shelves. We're not seeing the economic collapse. The stock market is an all-time high. We're not seeing any of the things these people predicted. But instead of admitting that, hey, we were wrong, we should not have just assumed that these were the tariffs that were going to be put in place. We should have been smarter and assumed that the president was negotiating instead of just acknowledging that, no. Well, we were wrong because Trump folded. That's why we were wrong, right? We were wrong because Trump folded, even though Trump never folded. Because, again, he never intended to have tariff rates that high on all those countries. That should have been common sense from the beginning.
Happened, but it didn't stop individuals who were antagonistic to the president and his agenda, whether they agree with him or not, from saying that this is still going to lead to significant inflationary rates. We have not seen that.
Yeah,
and so you would think individuals who were on the negative of this would have at a minimum acknowledged the fact that the president did not implement those high tariff rates, which you just stated.
It is super simple. Did Donald Trump implement the tariff levels that he
No, I acknowledge that the tariff levels my point is,
when you evaluate whether or not inflation has resulted from those tariff levels, how are you evaluating it?
I'll
because
tell you,
they haven't gone into place. So obviously, inflation hasn't increased to the levels that people projected if they had gone into place.
We're arguing two different things. The point that I'm making is individuals who said at the time that this would lead to a recession continue to make the same argument despite the fact that those tariff rates were not implemented. That's the point I'm making, and no one here is willing to acknowledge that fact.
Let me just play.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, they were going to say that Trump's policies were going to cause a recession regardless of the rates, right? Again, if he would have came out with 10 to 15% from the beginning, they would have said, oh, this is going to cause a recession. Again, the disingenuous person here is Abby Phillip, who's clearly embarrassed about being called out for being wrong.
Because I'm not an economist, but this guy is.
Yeah, we all know that you're not. Right, thank you for acknowledging the obvious.
And the impact on the economy.
Higher tariffs have begun to show through more clearly to prices of some goods, but their overall effects on economic activity and inflation remain to be seen. Effective level of tariffs is not moving around that much at this point, but at the same time, there are many uncertainties left to resolve.
And honestly, the main uncertainty that he's talking about is that we just don't know what the deals are going to end up looking like. And we might know come Friday.
Yeah, we don't. So if we don't know what the deal is going to end up looking like, then why all these doomsday predictions, right? Why all these predictions if we don't know how things are going to end up? That's the whole point. The whole point, the reason why you're being called out is because you made all these predictions while at the same time not knowing what the outcome was going to be. Why make these predictions if you don't know what the outcome is going to be? Again, it's hilarious, right? They want to be excused for being wrong, right? They want to say, well, we don't know what the outcome is going to be, right? We didn't know that Trump wasn't actually going to implement these tariffs at those levels that were initially stated. Well, again, if you didn't know that, why make these crazy predictions? Why do it? Why don't you just say, hey, let's wait and see? Which is what smart people would have said, hey, let's wait and see, right? Let's wait and see what happens. But that's not what they did.
Come Friday, and then next month we'll assess the situation. But right now,
can I just say, the deals. Let's talk about the deals. Right. So we've got the deal with the European Union, which somebody has already described as pie in the sky. They simply will not buy that amount of energy, and nor will they invest that amount of money. We have the deal with Japan, where nobody knows where the $650 billion worth of investment is going to come from. Nobody. The Japanese admit they don't know where it's going to come from. We've got the deal announced today with the South Koreans. What Donald Trump has brilliantly done, he wanted a headline number, and it's around 15%, but the underlying terms of trade deals are garbage.
So Richard, what deal would you have preferred?
How do you mean?
Well, what details of a deal would suffice for you?
Well, I would have liked them to have negotiated a proper long-term
What's proper?
deal.
Let's focus on the word proper.
Where the
What's
detail
proper
holds
to
up.
you?
Where the detail...
No, because you keep saying this, but you're giving no specificity whatsoever.
Well,
I can sit here and name a whole bunch of random ridiculousness. That means absolutely nothing at all.
With respect, no, because they've actually announced a European deal where supposedly $600
So
billion...
give specifics about what you would like to see in an alternative. Wait a minute, Scott. Give an alternative and give specifics for what would be a deal that would satisfy your critique.
A long-term trade relationship deal that doesn't rely on a fictitious amount of investment.
Okay.
The Japan deal.
Okay,
No.
I'm listening.
The Japan deal envisages $650 billion worth of investment. But nobody says by whom or how or the penalty against. It is literally making it up.
Look,
because
let me let some of the other.
Yeah. So again, let me explain what's going on here. This guy is trying to have his cake and eat it too. He says, well, I don't like the fact that these deals, right, are just frameworks and not actual deals. I want to see long-term, detailed deals. Well, everybody knows it takes years to negotiate those type of deals, right? what you have here is an agreement on a framework, an overall goal of, hey, these are the top line terms, right? But those details are going to be worked out, right? We're promising to work out those details at a later date because it takes years, again, to work out these details, right? But we agreed to the overall terms. Now, this guy, if there was no announcement on trade deal frameworks, right? If there was no announcement on that, what would they be saying? Well, Trump doesn't have any trade deals. See, nobody wants to negotiate with Trump. They announce an agreement on frameworks, and then they say, well, I want to see actual real deals. I want to see real negotiated deals. So again, you know that it takes years for these deals to be hashed out. Why are you criticizing him for not having any deals, right? So again, it's damned if you do, damned if you don't with these people. If you say, hey, we have an agreement on a framework, oh, well, it's not a real deal. But if there are no announcements at all, then, oh, see, we told you. Trump couldn't make any trade deals, right? Even though they know it takes years to hash out the details. They know this, and they know that that is what these countries agreed upon. They agreed to hash out the details, right? They agreed to an overall framework. We're going to work out the details and go from there. They know this. So again, I just want you guys to realize that the people who are being disingenuous about the data, that are being disingenuous about all of this stuff surrounding the economy, are these liberals, right? Who, again, are going to be mad no matter what. And then when confronted on being wrong, they want to make all these excuses. Oh, well, Trump didn't actually follow through, blah, 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 blah. Again, it's just excuse after excuse after excuse instead of just admitting, hey, we were wrong. Okay, we were wrong. But hey, let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.